The child's scream pierced the night as Ilara watched the soldier's blade descend toward the little girl's neck. And without thinking, she hurled herself forward, taking the slash across her shoulder instead. The blood blooming hot and fast as she locked eyes with a figure standing in the smoke. A man whose stillness amid the chaos made her certain he was death itself, come to watch her village burn. Wait before the next revelation happens. If this mystery has already captivated you, let us know where you're following this story from. To make sure you don't miss any unexpected alliances or awakened powers, subscribe and join our circle. The game is about to change. Now, back to the scene. The flames roared behind her, consuming the small timber homes of Ashwick as if they were kindling. Ilara clutched the child, couldn't have been more than 6, and stumbled backward, her torn dress catching on splintered wood. The soldier advanced, his armor bearing the crimson phoenix of House Dravenmore, the same sigil she'd seen on banners when the warlord's army swept through 3 days ago, demanding tribute. "Interfering with the cleansing, are we?" The soldier's voice was muffled behind his helm. "Lord Dravenmore wants no witnesses. The land needs to be clear for the new estates." Ilara's mind raced. Clear for estates? They weren't raiders. This was systematic erasure. Her village had been condemned not for rebellion or unpaid taxes, but because some nobleman wanted the fertile valley their ancestors had cultivated for generations. She glanced at the motionless figure in the smoke, tall, dressed in black that seemed to drink in the firelight rather than reflect it. He hadn't moved, hadn't helped, just watched. "Run!" she hissed to the child, shoving her toward the forest line. The soldier lunged, and the watching man moved. One moment, he was 20 paces away. The next, his hand was wrapped around the soldier's wrist, stopping the blade mid-arc with such casual strength that the soldier's confident sneer transformed into confusion, then terror. "You've done enough," the man said quietly. His voice carried a strange quality, like distant thunder or the rumble of an avalanche, beautiful and catastrophic at once. Ilara could see him clearly now, pale skin that seemed to glow in the firelight, dark hair swept back from a face of severe, almost painful beauty, and eyes. His eyes were crimson. Not brown or hazel catching the light strangely, crimson, the deep red of arterial blood. The soldier screamed as his wrist shattered with an audible crack. He crumpled, and the dark man released him with evident distaste, letting him writhe in the ash-covered earth. "You're hurt." The crimson gaze fixed on Ilara's bleeding shoulder. She pressed her hand against the wound, trying to appear braver than she felt. Around them, the sounds of her village dying continued, screams cut short, timber crashing, the terrible efficiency of murder. "Who are you?" "Someone who's seen enough burning villages for 1 century. He stepped closer, and Ilara thought the instinct to retreat. "I'm called Theron, and you're either very brave or very foolish. My name is Ilara, and I'm a dead woman either way." She glanced toward the forest where the child had disappeared. At least one might survive. "If you've come to feed, make it quick. I won't scream and draw the others back." A flicker of something crossed his perfect features, surprise, perhaps, or dark amusement. "You know what I am?" Old Mara spoke of the Nightwalkers, the blood drinkers who live in the mountains. Ilara met his eyes defiantly. "The vampires." She said they were demons, but honestly, you can't be worse than men who burn children alive for land rights. Theron studied her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Old Mara was wiser than most, but not entirely correct. He tilted his head, inhaling. You smell of smoke and fear and rage. Good. Rage keeps you alive. Another scream split the air, this one from near the village square. Ilara's heart clenched. That sounded like Jenna, the baker's daughter. I have to! She tried to move past him. His hand caught her arm, not painfully, but immovably. There are 47 soldiers. You're injured and unarmed. What exactly do you plan to accomplish? I don't know. Something. Tears burned her eyes, hot and furious. They're killing everyone. My neighbors, my friends, the children. Yes, they are. His voice remained calm, factual. As they've killed hundreds of villages across Valoria this year alone. Lord Dravenmore is consolidating power, eliminating the common folk who might remember the old laws, the ones that protected peasants from wholesale slaughter for profit. Ilara stared at him. You know this? And you just watch? I'm not human, Ilara of Ashwick. Human politics, human wars, they're not my concern. I was merely passing through when I smelled the smoke. His grip on her arm loosened slightly. I stopped to observe. I've learned that interfering in mortal affairs tends to complicate things. Complicate things? She repeated, her voice hollow. My village is being erased from existence, and you're worried about complications? Yes. The brutal honesty of it stunned her more than a blow. At least he wasn't pretending compassion. Another crash echoed through the night as the meeting hall collapsed inward, sparks spiraling into the darkness. Ilara felt something inside her collapse too. Her parents were already dead. She'd seen them fall when the soldiers first swept through. Her younger brother had been visiting the market in the next town. Perhaps he'd survive, never knowing what happened. Everyone else. Then why save me? She demanded. Why stop that soldier if you don't interfere? Theron released her arm entirely. Because you threw yourself in front of a blade for a child who wasn't yours. Because your blood smells like courage, and that's become rare. He turned away, gazing at the burning village with those unsettling red eyes. And because I'm curious what you'll do next. Do next? A bitter laugh escaped her. I'll die, probably. If not tonight, then when I try to survive alone in the forests with no supplies, no shelter, no... Or, he interrupted, you could propose a bargain. Ilara froze. The screams had grown fewer now. The soldiers were finishing their work. What kind of bargain? I've been seeking something. Theron spoke without looking at her, his attention on the flames. For 200 years, I've held a territory in the northern mountains, a fortress, lands, villages that pay me tribute in blood. Not enough to harm them, just enough to sustain me. I've kept them safe from other predators, both human and supernatural. But I'm an alpha without an heir, without a companion, and that makes me vulnerable in the politics of my kind. Vampires who sense weakness circle like wolves. I don't understand what this has to do with... I need someone human by my side, someone brave enough to stand in my court, clever enough to navigate its dangers, and strong enough not to break under the weight of what that life demands. Now he did look at her, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. Someone with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. The implications slowly crystallized in her shocked mind. You want me to, what? Be your companion? Your servant? My consort. The word hung between them like a blade. In name and appearance only, if that's your preference. I have no interest in forcing intimacies. But I need the political stability that comes with a bonded human. And you need protection, resources, and, He gestured at the burning village. Revenge. Revenge. The word tasted like ash and promise together. Do you think Lord Dravenmore's soldiers will stop here? They're moving through the valley, village by village. Ashwick is just one mark on their list. Theron's expression remained neutral, but something cold flickered in his eyes. As my consort, you'd have my resources at your disposal. My wealth, my influence, my power. Rebuilding your village would be trivial. Ensuring Dravenmore pays for what he's done, that would take more finesse, but it could be arranged. Ilara's heart hammered against her ribs. You're lying. Why would you help me take revenge? You just said human politics aren't your concern. They're not, but making a grand gesture to establish my new consort's legitimacy, that serves my purposes. He smiled, and it was a terrible, beautiful thing. The other vampires would see that I'm willing to mobilize my resources, that I've chosen a human strong enough to command respect. It would buy me a decade of peace at least, and you would have justice for Ashwick. It was insane. He was a vampire, a creature of nightmares and children's warnings. He'd admitted he didn't care about human suffering, that he'd simply been passing through when her world ended. He was offering her a devil's bargain, a contract written in blood and desperation. And yet, if I refuse, she asked quietly. Theron shrugged. Then I continue north, you flee into the forest, and we both forget this conversation. You'll survive or you won't. Ashwick will be forgotten within a year, just another name in the ledger of Dravenmore's expansion. A child's distant cry, cut short, made the decision for her. I want my village rebuilt, Ilara said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. Every building, every home. I want the families who fled tonight found and brought back safely. I want Ashwick restored. Done. And I want Lord Dravenmore to suffer. Not a quick death. I want him to lose everything he's built on the backs of villages like mine. His wealth, his power, his legacy. I want him to know why it's happening. Theron's smile widened, showing just a hint of elongated canines. That will take time, but yes, I can arrange it. Then I accept your bargain. She lifted her chin, but I have conditions. Naturally. I won't become a vampire. Ever. That's non-negotiable. Agreed. I need you human. I won't be your meal. You'll feed elsewhere. Acceptable, though allowing me to drink from you occasionally would strengthen the political appearance of our bond. We can negotiate that later. Ilara pushed forward before she could lose her nerve. And when this is done, when my village is rebuilt and Dravenmore has paid, I want the option to leave, to go back to Ashwick and live as a human again. For the first time, Theron hesitated. That complicates things. A consort bond isn't meant to be temporary. Then we'll make history. Her eyes blazed. Those are my terms. Take them or leave them. The vampire studied her for a long moment. Behind them, the sounds of destruction had faded to the crackle of dying fires. Ashwick was gone. Everyone she'd ever known was dead or scattered. She had nothing but the blood-soaked dress she wore and the fury burning in her chest. You're extraordinary, Theron said finally. Yes, I accept your terms, including the eventual option to leave, though I suspect you'll find your new life more compelling than you imagine. He extended his hand. Shall we seal it the traditional way? Ilara looked at his pale, long-fingered hand. How do vampires seal bargains? Blood, naturally. His smile turned wry. Just a drop, mixed with mine. It creates a bond that prevents either of us from betraying the core agreement. She should refuse. This was madness. But the alternative was cowering in the forest while Dravenmore's men hunted survivors, and her village became forgotten dust. Ilara placed her hand in his. His skin was cool, but not corpse-cold, firm, and somehow alive despite everything legends said. "You're extraordinary," Theron said finally. "Yes, I accept your terms, including the eventual option to leave. Though I suspect you'll find your new life more compelling than you imagine." He extended his hand. "Shall we seal it the traditional way?" Ilara looked at his pale, long-fingered hand. How do vampires seal bargains? Blood, naturally. His smile turned wry. Just a drop, mixed with mine. It creates a bond that prevents either of us from betraying the core agreement. She should refuse. This was madness. But the alternative was cowering in the forest while Dravenmore's men hunted survivors, and her village become forgotten dust. Ilara placed her hand in his. His skin was cool, but not corpse-cold, firm, and somehow alive despite everything legend said. Theron drew a small knife from his belt, the blade gleaming silver in the moonlight, and made a swift cut across his palm. Dark blood, almost black in the darkness, welled up. Then he offered her the knife. She mimicked the cut, gasping as the blade bit into her flesh. Her blood looked shockingly red against his darkness. Theron pressed their palms together. The world exploded. Light and shadow crashed through her mind like a tidal wave. She felt his presence, ancient, vast, carrying memories of centuries she couldn't begin to comprehend. For an instant, she sensed his true nature, a predator of such profound power that her human mind recoiled from the immensity of it. But beneath the predator lurked something else, loneliness, a weariness with existence that stretched back farther than her village's entire history. He felt alone. Then the sensation vanished, leaving her gasping and dizzy. What was that? She tried to pull her hand away, but he held firm. The bond settling. Theron's expression had shifted slightly, as though he'd experienced something unexpected too. You felt my truth. I felt yours. Neither of us can break our word now without both knowing. She trailed off, uncertain how to describe it. I know. He released her hand. I felt your rage. It's impressive, like standing near a forge. He wiped the blood from his palm, the wound already closing. Welcome to your new existence, Ilara. We should leave before the soldiers decide to sweep the perimeter. Reality crashed back. Wait, the child, the one I saved. I have to find her, make sure she reached the forest. Already gone. I can hear her heartbeat 300 yards north, moving steadily away. She'll survive. Theron gestured toward the shadows beyond the flames. My horse is waiting. We'll ride through the night and reach my fortress by dawn. Your fortress? Ilara felt the weight of what she'd agreed to settling over her like a shroud. I don't even know where that is. The Blackspire Mountains. My estate is called Ravencross. He began walking, clearly expecting her to follow. You'll adjust. Most humans find the transition challenging, but you seem resilient. She stared at his retreating back, then at her burning village. The home she'd known for 23 years was gone. The life she'd expected, marriage to Thomas the miller's son, children, growing old surrounded by familiar faces, all of it erased in one night of systematic brutality. But she wasn't gone. She was alive, and she'd just made a bargain that would give her the power to strike back. Ilara took a deep breath, tasting smoke and blood and the strange scent of vampire, something like iron and winter, and followed Theron into the darkness. His horse was magnificent, a black stallion that eyed her with more intelligence than seemed natural.
Theron mounted with fluid grace and extended a hand down to her. "Can it carry both of us?" she asked. "Midnight can carry 5 men in full armor without complaint. I assure you, your weight won't trouble him." There was a hint of amusement in his voice. She accepted his hand and let him pull her up. The saddle forced her to sit close against his back, and she tried to ignore the strangeness of it, the coolness of his body, the way he sat utterly still between breaths, the sense of leashed power just beneath the surface. "Hold on," Theron advised. "I don't ride like humans do." Before she could ask what that meant, he urged Midnight forward, and the world became a blur of speed. Trees whipped past so fast they were just dark streaks. The wind tore at her hair, her dress, stealing her breath. She clung to Theron's waist, certain they would crash. But the vampire guided his mount with perfect control through the forest paths. They rode like that for hours, and gradually Ilara's terror faded into exhaustion. Her shoulder throbbed where the soldier had cut her. Her hands ached from gripping Theron's coat.
The enormity of what had happened kept trying to crash over her, but she pushed it down, down, down. She couldn't afford to break yet. Finally, as true darkness began to fade into the gray light of pre-dawn, Theron slowed Midnight to a normal pace. "Look," he said simply. Ilara lifted her head and gasped. They'd climbed into mountains, real mountains, not the gentle hills around Ashwick, and ahead, perched on a crag of black stone, rose a fortress of such dark magnificence that it seemed carved from shadow itself. Towers spiraled upward, connected by bridges that defied gravity. Windows glowed with amber light. The whole structure seemed to grow organically from the mountain, as if it had always been there, waiting. "Ravencross." "That's your home?" she whispered. "Our home," Theron corrected. "For now." As they approached, Ilara saw figures moving on the walls. Guards, she realized. And not all of them moved quite like humans, too fluid, too still. How many vampires live here? In the fortress proper, 12, including myself. I'm the Alpha, they're my court. Then there are the human servants, the guards, and the villages in my territory. He glanced back at her. You'll meet them all soon enough. But first, you need to understand something crucial. What? My court will test you. They'll try to find your weakness, to see if you're worthy, or just a momentary fancy I'll discard when bored. Some will resent you for being human. Others will see you as prey. His voice hardened. You must never show fear. Never apologize for existing. You're my consort now, which means you rank second only to me in Ravencross. Any vampire who challenges that, challenges me. Ilara's stomach twisted. You're saying I have to face down vampires? I don't know anything about your world, your politics. Then you'll learn quickly. I'll teach you what I can, but much of it you'll have to navigate by instinct. Theron urged Midnight up the final slope toward the fortress gates. You chose this. You wanted the power to rebuild Ashwick and destroy Dravenmore. Power always has a price. The gates swung open silently as they approached, revealing a courtyard lit by torches that burned with strange blue flames. Servants in dark livery emerged from doorways, moving to take Midnight's reins as Theron dismounted. He helped Ilara down, and she immediately felt every eye in the courtyard fix on her. Human eyes, skeptical and curious, and other eyes, crimson or amber or silver, that held ancient calculation. A woman glided forward from the main entrance, her movements impossibly graceful. She wore a gown of deep burgundy that complemented her pale skin and the cascade of black hair falling to her waist.
Beautiful didn't begin to cover it. She looked like an artist's dream of feminine perfection, until you noticed the coldness in her amber eyes. Theron. Her voice was honey over steel. You return with company? How unusual. Morgana. Theron's tone carried a warning. Meet Elara, my consort. She'll be staying at Ravencross. The courtyard fell silent. Morgana's expression didn't change, but something sharp entered her gaze. Your consort? How sudden. And she's human. Not a question, an accusation. I'm aware of what she is. Theron moved slightly, positioning himself between Elara and Morgana. Spread the word. Elara is to be afforded every respect and protection due to her position. Anyone who harms her answers to me personally. Of course. Morgana's smile revealed pointed teeth. We would never dream of harming your pet. Before Elara could stop herself, she stepped around Theron. I'm not his pet. I'm his consort. And if you have concerns about my presence, perhaps you should voice them directly instead of hiding behind pretty words. The courtyard went even quieter. Several vampires inhaled sharply. Morgana's eyes widened fractionally. Then she laughed, a sound like breaking crystal. Oh, she has spirit.
This might be entertaining after all. She looked at Theron. Very well. Consort Elara, welcome to Ravencross. I'm Morgana, second of the Alpha's court. I'm sure we'll get to know each other intimately. The way she said intimately made Elara's skin crawl, but she kept her expression neutral. I look forward to it. Theron placed a hand on Elara's shoulder, a gesture of possession or support, she couldn't tell which. Elara needs chambers prepared, a bath, fresh clothing, and medical attention for her wound. See to it, Morgana. Of course, my lord. Morgana's formal tone carried a mocking edge. Shall I have her placed in the East Wing, or perhaps the Consort's suite? The Consort's suite. Theron's voice brooked no argument. It's been empty long enough. Something flickered across Morgana's face. Surprise, anger, something else. As you command. She turned and swept back into the fortress, and gradually the others dispersed, though Elara could feel their attention like physical pressure. That went better than expected, Theron murmured. Better? Elara stared at him. She practically threatened me to my face. Yes, but you stood your ground. That bought you some respect. He guided her toward the entrance. Morgana was my last consort's, let's say, friend. She didn't take the ending well. Elara stopped walking. You've had a consort before? 2 centuries ago. It didn't end happily. His expression closed off. I'll tell you about it later. Right now, you need rest and healing. Dawn is coming, and I'll need to retire soon. They entered the fortress, and Elara's breath caught. The interior was magnificent. Soaring ceilings, tapestries depicting battles and hunts, furniture that looked ancient and valuable. But there was a coldness to it, a sense of beauty without warmth. Morgana waited at the base of a grand staircase, her expression smoothed into polite neutrality. The suite is ready, my lord. I've had the servants prepare everything as requested. Thank you. Theron nodded to Elara. Go with Morgana. I'll come find you at sunset. We'll discuss your education then. Elara wanted to protest, suddenly reluctant to leave his side, the one familiar presence in this alien place, but she forced herself to nod. Until sunset, then. She followed Morgana up the stairs, acutely aware of the vampire's predatory grace, the way she moved without making a sound. They climbed for what felt like forever, passing corridors and doorways, until finally Morgana stopped before an ornate door carved with ravens. "The Consort's Suite." Morgana pushed it open. "You'll find everything you need inside. Servants will bring food and attend to your wound shortly." Ilara stepped inside and froze. The rooms were enormous, a sitting area with a fireplace, a bedroom with a bed large enough for 5 people, windows overlooking the mountains, rich fabrics, dark woods, everything screaming wealth and power. "One word of advice," Morgana said from the doorway, her voice dropping to something more genuine. "Don't trust anyone here. Not the servants, not the courtiers, not even Theron. We're all playing our own games, and you're now a piece on the board whether you like it or not." Before Ilara could respond, Morgana closed the door, leaving her alone. She stood in the center of the lavish room, still wearing her blood-stained dress, ash in her hair, the smell of smoke clinging to her skin. Just hours ago, she'd been Ilara of Ashwick, a simple village girl dreaming of a simple life. Now she was consort to an alpha vampire, surrounded by predators, bound by a blood oath to a creature she barely knew. The enormity of it finally crashed over her. Ilara made it to a chair before her legs gave out, and then, finally, she let herself cry. For her parents, her village, her lost future, for the terror of what lay ahead. But beneath the grief, that ember of rage still burned. Dravenmore would pay. Ashwick would be rebuilt. She'd made a bargain, and she would see it through, even if it destroyed her. The servants arrived as dawn light began filtering through the windows. 3 human women who moved with quiet efficiency, helping her out of her ruined dress, tending to her shoulder wound with skilled hands, and drawing a bath in the adjacent room that steamed with herbs and heat. "What are your names?" Ilara asked as they worked. The oldest, a woman with gray threading through her dark hair, answered softly. "I'm Helena, my lady. This is Rose and Catherine. We serve the Consort's Suite. Have you been here long?" 20 years, my lady." Helena's hands were gentle as she cleaned the sword wound. "My mother served before me. Ravencross protects those who serve well." "Protects from what?" "From everything else in these mountains." Helena met her eyes. "The master keeps his word. Follow the rules, earn his favor, and you'll be safe. That's more than most humans can say in this age." Ilara absorbed that as they helped her into the bath. The hot water made her gasp, then groan as it eased muscles she hadn't realized were knotted with tension. Rose washed her hair, working the smoke smell out with patience. "The masters never brought home a consort before," Catherine ventured, young and curious. "Not in our lifetime." "Catherine," Helena chided. "It's all right." Ilara leaned back in the tub. "Yes, Lord Dravenmore's soldiers destroyed my home last night. Everyone I knew is dead or scattered." "Dravenmore." Helena's voice went hard. "That name carries weight in the lower valleys. He's been expanding his territory for years, crushing anyone who resists." "Not for much longer," Ilara said quietly. The servants exchanged glances, but didn't press further. After the bath, they dressed her in a gown of deep forest green, simple compared to what she'd seen Morgana wearing, but finer than anything she'd owned in Ashwick. The fabric whispered against her skin like water. "You should rest, my lady," Helena advised. "The master won't wake until sunset. That gives you several hours." Ilara wanted to protest that she was too wired to sleep, but the moment her head touched the pillow, softer than clouds, or so she imagined clouds would feel, exhaustion dragged her under like a riptide. She dreamed of fire and crimson eyes and a voice promising revenge.
When she woke, the sun was setting, painting her windows in shades of blood and gold. Someone had left food on a table near the bed: bread, cheese, fruit, cold meat. Ilara's stomach reminded her she hadn't eaten since yesterday's breakfast, and she devoured the meal with undignified hunger. A knock sounded at the door just as she finished. "Come in," she called, wiping her mouth. Theron entered, and she was struck again by how inhumanly beautiful he was. He'd changed into fresh clothing, black as always, but tailored to perfection. His dark hair was slightly damp, as if he'd bathed too. "You look better," he observed, rested. "Your servants are efficient," Ilara stood, smoothing her gown self-consciously. "And kind. They're paid well to be both." He moved to the window, gazing out at the darkening mountains. "How's your shoulder?" "Stitched and bound. Helena said it would heal cleanly." "Good." He turned back to her. "We have much to discuss. Your education needs to begin immediately if you're to survive the court's scrutiny." "What do I need to know?" Theron smiled slightly. "Everything, but we'll start with the basics." He gestured to the sitting area, and they settled into chairs facing each other. "First, vampire hierarchy. I'm an alpha, which means I hold territory and rule other vampires. There are perhaps 50 alphas across the known world. Below us are the court vampires, those who've sworn loyalty to an alpha in exchange for protection and resources. Below them are the rogues, vampires without territory or allegiance, often dangerous and unpredictable." "And humans?" Ilara asked. "Are food, mostly, or servants if they're lucky enough to catch an alpha's attention." His bluntness didn't soften the words. "That's the reality of our world. I treat my human subjects better than most. I maintain the old laws, protect them from rogues and rival alphas, take only what I need for sustenance. But never forget, to most vampires, you're prey. Even as my consort, some will test whether I truly protect you." A chill ran down her spine. "How do I defend myself?" "You don't. Not physically." He leaned forward. "You'll be given a token, a ring or pendant that carries my scent, my power. It marks you as mine. Any vampire who harms you without cause knows they'll face me. But vampires are cunning. They'll find ways to attack that don't leave marks. Social humiliation, political maneuvering, psychological warfare. So I need to learn politics, and psychology, and history, and how to read the subtle cues." Theron studied her. "You'll also need to understand what it means to be my consort. We'll need to appear connected, intimate, without necessarily being intimate. Can you manage that?" Ilara felt her cheeks heat. "You mean pretend to be lovers? Lovers, partners, whatever narrative convinces the court we're genuinely bonded." His crimson eyes held hers. "I won't touch you without permission, Ilara. That was part of our bargain. But in public, we'll need to present a united front. That means I might put my hand on your waist, or you might need to sit close to me during court functions, or we might need to dance together. Are you comfortable with that level of performance?" She thought about it. After everything she'd lost, a little play acting seemed like a small price. "Yes, I can manage that." "Good." He relaxed slightly. "Now, about rebuilding Ashwick. I've already sent word to my steward." Hell, survey the damage and begin hiring craftsmen. We'll need to locate the survivors. Do you have any idea where they might have fled? The forest to the east, maybe, or north toward Millbrook, the nearest town. Ilara's heart clenched. How long will it take? 3 months for the physical rebuilding, perhaps 4. Finding every survivor will take longer. Theron's expression gentled. "I've also sent scouts to watch Dravenmore's movements. When you're ready, we'll plan his downfall properly. Revenge is a dish best served cold, as they say. Who was your last consort? The question escaped before she could stop it. Morgana mentioned Isabel. Pain flickered across his face. There and gone so quickly, Elara almost missed it. She was different from you. Gentle, artistic, completely unsuited for the vampire world, but desperate to escape her abusive father. I offered her protection, and we grew to care for each other genuinely. He paused. She lasted 5 years before the strain of this life broke her mind. She walked into the sun one dawn. Elara's breath caught. She killed herself? Yes, and I've carried that guilt for 2 centuries. Theron met her eyes. That's why I made our bargain include an exit clause. I won't trap you here until you fracture. If you want to leave, eventually, you can. Though I hope, he trailed off. Hope what? That you'll find this life has compensations, that you'll want to stay. He stood abruptly. But that's for the future. Tonight, you'll be formally presented to the court. They need to see you, assess you, understand that you're not going anywhere. Terror and determination warred in Elara's chest. What should I expect? Questions, challenges, possibly some attempts to intimidate you. Theron extended his hand. Stay close to me. Answer truthfully, but don't volunteer information. And remember, you're not a supplicant. You're my consort. You bow to no one but me. She took his hand, feeling the now familiar cool strength of his grip, and let him lead her out of the suite and into the heart of Ravencross. The court gathered in what Theron called the Hall of Shadows, a vast chamber with a vaulted ceiling painted in murals of night skies and hunting scenes. Chandeliers hung from chains, their candles casting dancing light across the assembled vampires. There were more than Elara expected, not just the 12 court members, but others, guests perhaps, or visiting vampires from other territories. All beautiful, all dangerous, all turning to watch as Theron led her to a raised dais at the hall's far end. 2 thrones sat there, carved from black wood and inlaid with silver. Theron took the larger one and gestured for Elara to take the other. She sat, trying to project confidence she didn't feel, and surveyed the gathered immortals. Morgana stood near the front, her expression unreadable. Beside her was a male vampire with silver hair and violet eyes, watching Elara with undisguised curiosity. Others clustered in groups, whispering behind their hands. Theron raised his voice, and the hall fell silent immediately. "My court," he began, his words carrying effortlessly through the space. "I present Elara of Ashwick, my chosen consort. She comes to us from tragedy, having lost her home to the greed of mortal lords. She has accepted my protection and my bond. As of this night, she stands as second only to me within these walls. Any who challenge her, challenge me." The silence stretched. Then Morgana stepped forward, her movements liquid grace. "Forgive me, my lord, but the court has questions." Her tone was respectful, but steel lurked beneath. "It's been 200 years since you took a consort. Why now? And why this particular human?" Theron's expression remained neutral. "Because I chose her. Is that insufficient?" "Of course not, my lord," Morgana smiled coldly. "But surely the court deserves to understand what qualities you saw in this village girl that warranted such an unprecedented honor." Elara felt every eye fix on her. This was the test Theron had warned about. She could remain silent, let him defend her, and appear weak, or she could answer herself and risk saying something wrong. She stood, "I'll answer that. Ilara said, her voice steady. Lord Theron found me defending a child from soldiers who were burning my village. My people were being slaughtered for the crime of occupying land that a nobleman wanted. I had two choices, run and hide or fight knowing I would die. She met Morgana's amber eyes. I chose to fight. And when Lord Theron offered me a bargain, his protection and power in exchange for standing as his consort, I accepted because I want revenge. I want justice, and I want my village rebuilt from the ashes. The silver-haired vampire laughed, a sound of genuine delight. By the blood! She's got fire! I like her already. Lucian, Morgana said, warningly. Oh, don't Lucian me, Morgana. You asked what qualities she has. He grinned at Ilara, showing fangs. Clearly, courage and determination. Plus, she's not fainting or weeping. That alone puts her ahead of most humans thrust into our world. Another vampire spoke up, this one a woman with auburn hair and green eyes. What makes you think you can survive here, human? This isn't some fairy tale. We're predators. You're prey. The only thing keeping you alive is Theron's protection, and that protection depends on his continued interest. You're right, Ilara agreed, surprising them. I'm prey among predators. I have no illusions about that. But I'm prey that refuses to act like prey. I'm prey that will learn your ways, navigate your politics, and become valuable enough that my continued existence serves everyone's interests. She paused. And I'm prey with nothing left to lose, which makes me dangerous in my own way. The auburn-haired vampire studied her.
Interesting. I'm Celine. I look forward to testing that theory. More questions came then, a barrage of inquiries about her background, her education, her intentions. Ilara answered each honestly, but carefully, following Theron's advice not to volunteer unnecessary information. Through it all, she felt his presence beside her, not intervening, but watchful, ready to step in if things went too far. Finally, Morgana raised her hand, and the questioning ceased. One final matter, my lord. She looked at Theron. A human consort requires certain protections, beyond the physical, I mean. She needs to understand our laws, our customs. She'll need education in our ways. Who will oversee this? I will, Theron said immediately. With respect, my lord, you have other duties, managing your territory, dealing with political matters, maintaining relations with other alphas. Morgana's smile turned sly. Perhaps I could assist. As your second, I have the time and experience to properly educate a new consort. Ilara's instinct screamed a warning. Morgana wanted access to her, wanted to find weaknesses, wanted control. Actually, Ilara interjected before Theron could respond. I'd prefer multiple teachers. Surely different members of the court have different expertise. Lord Theron can teach me about alpha politics and territory management. Perhaps Lucian, she nodded to the silver-haired vampire, could teach me about vampire history and the other great houses. Celine might instruct me on court dynamics and social navigation. She deliberately didn't assign anything to Morgana. Lucian laughed again. Oh, she's clever too. Yes, I accept. I'd be delighted to educate our new consort on the bloodlines and their tangled histories. And I suppose I could share my knowledge of court intrigue, Celine said thoughtfully. Though I warn you, girl, my lessons won't be gentle. I don't need gentle, Ilara replied. I need effective. Theron's lips quirked in what might have been approval.
Then it's decided. Ilara will receive comprehensive education from multiple sources. Morgana, you'll coordinate the schedule to ensure her lessons don't clash with court duties. It was a brilliant compromise. giving Morgana a role that kept her involved but not in direct control. From the flash of annoyance in her eyes, Morgana recognized the maneuver. "Of course, my lord," she said tightly. "Good." Theron rose, and Ilara quickly followed. The formal presentation is concluded. Those who wish to pay respect to the new consort may do so. The rest are dismissed. The crowd began to disperse, though several vampires lingered. Lucian approached first, his violet eyes twinkling with amusement. "You've made this court more interesting already," he said, bowing to Ilara with exaggerated flourish. "I look forward to our lessons. Fair warning, I'll expect you to remember every name, date, and scandalous detail. The history of vampire kind is written in blood and betrayal." "Sounds like human history," Ilara replied. "Oh, we learned from the best." He winked and sauntered away. Celine came next, her assessment more serious. "You handled Morgana well, but don't underestimate her. She loved Isabel, Theron's last consort, and blamed him when she died. Having you here reopens old wounds." "I'll be careful," Ilara promised. "See that you are." Celine's green eyes held a warning. "And remember, everyone here is playing their own game. Figure out what they want, and you'll understand their moves." As the vampires departed, Ilara felt exhaustion creeping back. The adrenaline that had carried her through the presentation was fading, leaving her hollow and shaking. Theron noticed immediately. "Come, you need food and rest. The performance is over." He guided her from the hall, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back, a gesture that looked intimate but felt oddly comforting. They walked through corridors that were beginning to feel less alien, past servants who bowed as they passed. "You did well," Theron said quietly once they were alone. "Better than I expected, honestly. Deflecting Morgana's attempt to control your education was particularly astute." "She wants to undermine me." Ilara glanced at him. "Why? What does she gain from my failure?" "Proof that I'm still vulnerable. Proof that choosing another consort was a mistake." They reached her suite, and Theron opened the door. "Morgana believes she should be my second in truth, not just in title. A consort complicates that ambition." "So I'm a threat to her position." "Yes, which means you need to be very careful around her." He followed her inside, closing the door behind them. The intimacy of the moment, alone in her chambers, suddenly struck Ilara. "May I speak frankly?" "Of course." Theron moved to the window, putting distance between them. "I told you I wouldn't force intimacy, and I meant it, but the court will expect certain evidence of our bond. They'll watch for signs that we're truly connected, not just acting apart." Ilara's pulse quickened. "What kind of evidence?" "Physical comfort with each other, shared looks, small touches, the kind of unconscious intimacy that develops between people who care for each other." He turned to face her. "We need to build that, not artificially, but genuinely, which means we need to spend time together, learn each other's patterns, become friends, if that's possible between a vampire and a human." "Friends," Ilara repeated. The word felt strange in this context. "Or allies, if you prefer that term. But the court needs to believe we have a real connection, or they'll assume you're temporary, disposable." His expression was serious. "I've kept you alive this far. Help me keep you alive longer by meeting me halfway." She understood what he was asking. Not romance, not seduction, but genuine partnership. Trust, even if built on pragmatic foundations. "All right," Ilara agreed. "How do we start?" "Tell me about your life in Ashwick, your family, your friends, your hopes before all this." He settled into a chair. "Help me understand who you were." So she did, halting at first, Then, with increasing ease, Ilara talked about her parents, her father the carpenter, her mother the healer, her younger brother Willem, who dreamed of being a scholar, her best friend Jenna, who'd had a laugh like summer rain, the small joys of village life, harvest festivals, winter stories around the fire, the simple satisfaction of work well done. Theron listened without interrupting, his ancient eyes somehow sad. "You had a good life," he said when she finished. "I'm sorry it was taken from you." "So am I." She met his gaze. "Now tell me about yours. 200 years is a long time. Who were you before you became Alpha?" Something shifted in his expression. "That's a longer story, and more painful. We have time." So he told her. About being turned during a war 3 centuries ago, left for dead on a battlefield, and found by a rogue vampire who saw potential in him. About clawing his way up through vampire society, learning to fight and scheme and survive in a world where weakness meant death. About claiming his territory through a combination of strategy and brutal combat, establishing Ravencross as a sanctuary for those who served him well. "And Isabel," Ilara asked gently, "was my attempt to be something other than a monster." His voice went quiet. "I thought if I could protect someone, care for someone, prove I had humanity left, but I was wrong. The damage was already done, and I infected her with my darkness." He looked at her. "I won't make that mistake with you. I'll give you the tools to survive, the power to achieve your goals, but I won't pretend we can be more and what we are." And what are we? 2 damaged souls using each other to survive. At least, I'll be honest about it. The bleakness in his words struck her. This creature of immense power, this Alpha who commanded legions, was lonely. Perhaps had been lonely for centuries. "What if we could be more than that?" Ilara said slowly. "Not lovers, necessarily, but genuine allies? People who actually care what happens to each other?" Theron stared at her. "You really believe that's possible?" "I don't know, but I'd like to try." She smiled slightly. "We're stuck with each other for at least a few years. Might as well make the best of it." For the first time, Theron's expression softened into something almost warm. "You're extraordinary, Ilara of Ashwick. Perhaps this bargain will surprise us both." He rose and moved toward the door, then paused. "Tomorrow, your education begins in earnest. Lucian will start with history after sunset. I'll take the evening shift, teaching you about territorial politics and alpha dynamics. Get sleep while you can. Theron?" He turned back. "Thank you for saving me, for giving me a chance at revenge, for this." She gestured at the room, the safety, the strange new life. "Thank me when Ashwick is rebuilt and Dravenmore is destroyed," he replied. But there was a hint of a smile on his perfect features as he left. Alone again, Ilara changed into the nightgown the servants had left, soft silk that felt scandalous against her skin, and climbed into the enormous bed. She should have felt terrified, should have spent the night weeping or planning escape. Instead, she felt something unexpected, hope. The bargain she'd made was dangerous, possibly fatal. She was surrounded by predators who saw her as prey. Her old life was ashes, and her new life was built on blood oaths and vampire politics. But she was alive. She had powerful allies, and she had a purpose. Ashwick would arise again. Dravenmore would fall. And maybe, just maybe, she and Theron could forge something real from this strange alliance. Ilara closed her eyes and slept deeply, dreaming not of fire, but of ravens circling a rebuilt village, their wings black against a hopeful dawn. The next weeks passed in a blur of education and adjustment. True to his word, Lucien proved an entertaining if demanding teacher, regaling her with tales of vampire history that read like epic sagas, wars between bloodlines, betrayals that reshaped territories, romances that ended in either eternal devotion or spectacular murder. "Remember," he said during one lesson, his violet eyes serious, "every vampire you meet has lived through events that would be legendary to humans. They've loved and lost dozens of times. They've seen empires rise and fall. This makes them both fascinating and deeply dangerous. They're always playing a longer game than you can imagine." Celine's lessons were harsher. She taught Ilara to read the subtle cues of vampire body language, the meaning behind careful word choices, the art of saying much while revealing nothing. "Never volunteer information," Celine instructed. "Answer questions, but only what's asked. Let them assume, let them guess, let them fill in the blanks with their own imaginations. Vampires respect mystery." And Theron's lessons were the most challenging. He taught her the complex web of alliances and rivalries between alphas, the delicate balance of power that kept their world from descending into open warfare. "There are rules," he explained one evening, maps of territories spread across his study table. "No alpha can attack another's claimed lands without cause. No vampire can create unlimited offspring without permission from their alpha. No supernatural creature can reveal our existence to humans in ways that would cause widespread panic. These laws keep us hidden and relatively peaceful." Relatively, Ilara traced the border of his territory on the map. "There are always skirmishes, always vampires testing boundaries. Always rogues who think the rules don't apply to them." He pointed to a region south of his lands. "This territory belongs to Alpha Constantine. He's old, powerful, and deeply suspicious of any change. When word spreads that I've taken a human consort, he'll either see it as weakness or as a provocative power play." "Which is it?" Theron smiled slightly. "Both. That's what makes politics interesting." Between lessons, Ilara explored Ravencross, always with guards, always careful not to wander into dangerous areas. She discovered a library that rivaled anything she'd heard of in great cities. Its shelves holding books in languages she couldn't read, and scrolls that looked ancient enough to crumble at a touch. She found gardens that bloomed at night, tended by human servants who seemed content with their strange existence. They told her about life under Theron's rule, the protection from rogues, the fair wages, the understanding that loyal service earned genuine safety. "He keeps his word," Helena told her one afternoon while changing the bandages on her healing shoulder. "Every alpha makes promises. Most break them when convenient. Lord Theron doesn't. That loyalty goes both ways. He protects us, we serve him, and the system works." "But you're still food," Ilara said quietly. "He still feeds from you." "Once a month, maybe. A pint of blood in exchange for protection that's kept me alive for 20 years? Helena shrugged. "I've got a roof over my head, food in my belly, and no fear of raiders or rogues. That's more than my sister has in the freelance. She's buried 3 children and lost a husband to bandit attacks. So yes, I'm food, but I'm alive." It was a perspective Ilara hadn't considered, that some humans might choose this life, might see the bargain as fair. Still, watching Theron feed for the first time was disturbing. He did it discreetly, taking only what he needed from willing servants who seemed almost euphoric afterward. Vampire saliva contained compounds that made the feeding pleasurable, turned pain into bliss. "It's a survival mechanism," Lucien explained when she asked. "Humans who enjoy being fed from are less likely to fight, less likely to tell others. It's evolution, not magic." "It's manipulation," Ilara countered. "Yes, that too," he didn't deny it. We're predators, little consort. Everything about us is designed to hunt and feed and survive. The fact that Theron tries to be ethical about it is actually remarkable. Most vampires don't bother.